In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His last and beloved Messenger Muhammad, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. The title of this presentation is Computer Viruses and Satan. I will try in this lecture, brothers and sisters, to make you understand more and more how does Satan affect each and every one of us by giving the similitude, giving the example of how computer viruses affect the computer and how Satan affects our brain, our mind. And by this similitude or this example, you will see, Allah God willing, and you will understand more and more how Satan affects each and every one of us. So to start, let's first look at the computer and its CPU, Central Processing Unit. Now, as you can see on the screen, on the left we have a computer. And the computer is basically a collection of inputs that come, for example, from the keyboard, from the mouse, from the microphone. And then these inputs, they get processed in the Central Processing Unit, the CPU. And based on this processing, you will have outputs you see on the screen, or you put information on a DVD. So basically the computer collection of inputs, processing and outputs. Now if you compare this to the human body and our brain, you see they are quite similar, because in your body you have inputs coming from your eyes, what you see, from your ears, what you hear, what you smell, what you touch. And then these inputs, they get processed in the human brain and in your soul. And based on this processing, you do outputs like what you say and what you do. So I think now it's becoming clearer, the link between the human body and the computer. Now, of course, we need programming for the computer. And also we need programming for our brain. Now, to start with the computer, for example, let's say Microsoft, they do programming for the computer and their operating system like Windows. So this is a program to program the computer. Likewise, our brain, we need programming to handle the inputs, to process the inputs and make outputs. And the only source of programming that Allah God Almighty wants for our body is the Quran, the last revelation of Allah God to people. That is the programming code for the brain. Let me elaborate on this further. Here we have a computer program. Now basically, brothers and sisters, a computer program is a collection of logic statements, meaning what to do with the inputs to produce outputs. For example, here we have one example. If you click with the mouse on a folder, this is an input. Now the program, let's say Microsoft Windows, it's programmed in a way that if you do this kind of input, then the program states, logic statement, that it should show the contents of the folder. So the output will be a file listing of the files within this folder. This is a program, logic statement, giving a relationship between inputs and outputs. I hope now a computer program now is clearer. It's logic statements. They tell the computer what to do with the inputs to produce outputs. Likewise, our brain, if it's programmed with the instructions found in the Quran. So here we have an example. Suppose that you are presented with alcohol to drink. That's an input. Now the Quranic programming prohibits you from drinking alcohol. Allah the Almighty states in the Quran that you are prohibited, you cannot drink alcohol. And Allah gives you the rationale, the reasoning behind this. So the output will be that you would not drink alcohol. So you see, the Quran is a programming for your brain, is a program for your brain. So this is the healthy kind of scenario. Now what happens is that if we have computer viruses, to start with the computer. Now what's the virus? What's a computer virus? Now a virus is like the original programming of the computer. It's a kind of statements. But these statements, they are illogical. What do I mean by this? Suppose we go back to the previous example, that you click on a mouse, you click with the mouse to open a folder. Now the virus, it's written in a way that if you do this, instead of doing file listing or looking or showing you the content of the folder, the virus might, for example, stop the computer or will do something illogical. So I hope now it's clear what's a virus. A virus is a statements that are illogical. It doesn't behave like you would expect. Now, likewise, Satan has the same effect on our brain. Going back to the example that you are presented with alcohol to drink. Now, Satan, with the mechanism I will explain in a minute, tries to program your brain to think that it's okay to drink alcohol and giving you the statements that it's okay, to make you do an output which is opposite 100% to what Allah God Almighty programs your brain with. So Satan wants you to drink alcohol because Satan knows that it will cause you pain and despair in this life and the hereafter. Waste your money, waste your health, and so forth. Now, to understand this more, we need to understand how does a computer virus enter the computer and how does Satan enter your brain. Now, a computer virus, it enters the computer by uploading the virus, which is like a file, to the computer. It gets into the computer. Now, how does Satan get into our brain? Allah God Almighty tells us this in the Quran in one verse, in chapter 114 verse 4, which reads, "From the evil of the whisperer who hides." From the evil of the whisperer who hides. So Allah God Almighty is telling us that Satan, the way he gets into our mind, that he whispers to us, meaning he talks to you, but at the same time he hides from you, meaning he doesn't want you to feel his presence. So how can you understand this? Now, from the Quran we understand that each and every one of us has a companion devil. When you are born in this world, there is a companion devil that's assigned to you at birth and stays with you till death. No one is immune from this. Now this companion devil, he talks to you, but at the same time he hides from you, meaning he doesn't want you to feel that he is present. The way he does this, the way he enters your mind, is that he matches his voice with all aspects to the voice you hear in your head. Because you see that when we think quietly, we hear a voice in our mind similar to the one we speak with. That's the voice of yourself. So your companion devil, Satan, he matches his voice to the one you hear in your mind. So ideas pop up in your mind, they just appear in your mind, and because the voice is identical, you think that you are thinking to yourself with these ideas, that you are so clever, and you get with these ideas. So, as you can see, here we have a voice recording. Now, your voice, like the one you hear in your mind, it has a certain tone, frequency, style of speech, the languages you know. So your companion devil, he matches all of these aspects. He matches his tone, his speed of speech, the style, the languages you know English, he will talk to you in English, ideas in your mind in English, you know French, you know German, you know Arabic. So he matches his voice, and your ideas pop up in your mind, and that's from your companion devil. So that is the way he gets into your mind. That's the way he tries to program your mind, by putting all of these statements in your mind, which are illogical, but he strives to make them logical. For example, coming back to alcohol example, when you are presented with alcohol, Allah God Almighty tells you not to drink alcohol. But Satan, what he does, he immediately when presented with alcohol, he starts whispering in your mind. You hear thoughts coming into your mind, saying, for example, look, your day was so hard, you are so stressful. So if you drink a little bit, just to relieve this pressure, it's okay. So you see, it's kind of programming. It is programming. And as a result of this programming, you drink alcohol. Now these statements, they are illogical, because you think of it that when you drink alcohol, you waste your money, your health, your problems will get compounded. But Satan tries to make them logical. because a person likes things which are logical. So I hope now we understand how Satan gets into your mind by a voice matching the one you think with. And also, Allah God Almighty tells us what Satan promised in the Quran in chapter 7 verse 16, which reads, "Because you have sent me astray, surely I will sit and wait against them on your straight path." So we learn from this verse that Satan promised Allah God Almighty that he will sit and wait against people on the path of Allah God Almighty, meaning that he will try to nullify, he will try to distort the programming of Allah God Almighty for the human brain. So if Allah God Almighty tells you not to drink alcohol, Satan will come to you in the opposite. So Satan tries to nullify, to distort what Allah God Almighty wants to program your brain with. It is like a virus. It is like a virus, computer virus. Okay, now let's give a quick proof to this conclusion or this deduction from the Quran of how Satan affects each and every one of us by a voice matching the one we think with. Now, in the Quran, Allah God Almighty tells us the kind of thoughts that Satan whispers into your mind with. As stated in the Quran in chapter 2 verse 169, which reads, "He, i.e. Satan, commands you what is harmful, sinful, and say about Allah what you have no knowledge of." So here Allah is telling us that Satan, the type of ideas he whispers in your mind, ideas of harm, to hurt yourself and others. For example, he comes to you in your mind telling you, "Look, this life is not good. Nothing good will happen to you, so that why don't you go and kill yourself?" Ideas of harm. Another type of ideas, he comes to you with a voice matching the one you think with in your mind, telling you, "Look, you are unclean, so go and wash your hands." And keep washing again and again to cause your skin irritations and eczema and so forth. Ideas of sinful acts like perverted sexual ideas and scenarios in your mind. And Satan pops ideas in your mind telling you to insult Allah, God, the Prophet Muhammad, and the Quran. Now, if we compare these ideas with the kind of ideas that cause people mental disturbances. Now, people with mental disturbances, if you ask anybody with mental disturbances, what kind of thoughts that cause you mental pain? They will tell you, "I experience ideas of harm to hurt myself and others, ideas of lust and perverted sexual ideas, and blasphemy, insulting Allah God Almighty." So we see a perfect match between the thoughts that cause people mental disturbances and those whispered by Satan, as Allah God Almighty is telling us about them in the Quran. And knowing that Satan is an enemy for people, he wants you to experience pain, we see from this perfect match that this is a proof for the mechanism of how Satan affects you and he enters your mind. Okay, now let's do, to understand this further, a comparison between the effects of computer viruses on the computer and the effect of Satan on the human brain. As you can see on the screen, the first comparison, memory utilization. Now, it is observed that when a computer virus infects a computer, it consumes so much of the memory of the computer. And as a result, you cannot do that much with the computer when it has a virus, because it consumes, due to its programming, so much of the RAM, the computer memory. Likewise, when Satan keeps putting these ideas in your mind, like for example, you left your house in the morning, when you are in your car, you start hearing ideas in your mind telling you forgot to lock the front door. As a result, you will be robbed. So it consumes so much of your memory. As a result of that, you become forgetful. You forget so much of the important stuff in your life. Another point of comparison, CPU usage. Now, again, when a computer virus infects a computer, it's observed that there is CPU overutilization, meaning that the central processing unit keeps doing so many kind of processes. Likewise, when you keep experiencing the ideas of Satan, telling you ideas of harm, lust, and blasphemy, your brain is working to just, you keep kind of going in a vicious cycle with these thoughts of Satan. As a result, you are wasting valuable kind of resources of your brain in something worthless, in just keeping, repeating the eyes of Satan in your mind, going in kind of a vicious cycle. So Satan just wastes your processing power of your brain. Is something useless. So you're not utilizing your brain in something useful. Another point of comparison, overheating and exhaustion. Again, when there is an increase in the CPU usage in the computer, there is thermal output, overheating. The computer degrades so much. Also in the human brain, when you keep thinking so much about the eyes of Satan, giving you phobia, for example, from being unclean, sexual scenarios, what happens is that you become exhausted and depressed. You don't want to do anything else. So basically, you're worn out. Also, another point of comparison, wrong outputs causing damage. When a computer virus, you will have so much problems with the computer. Wrong outputs, the computer stalling, just freezing on you. Likewise, when Satan is successful in programming your brain, for example, convincing you of drinking alcohol, of committing adultery, of insulting Prophet Muhammad and the Quran, you do actions which will bring you pain and despair in this life and the hereafter. So, now coming to the cure. What is the cure for computer viruses and Satan? Now, starting with computer viruses, there are two methods of resolving this issue. The first one is to remove the virus, to remove the file from the computer. But some viruses that are so strong that you cannot remove them. What you do something called quarantine. And this means that you block the effect of the virus. It's there, but it doesn't affect your computer, meaning that you stop the output phase from that virus. Likewise, Satan, you cannot remove it. You cannot remove the ideas you experience from Satan. You cannot. It will stay with you till you die. But what you can do, you can quarantine his effect, meaning you can strive in a way that I will explain in a minute, that he stops affecting your doings and sayings. How? Allah teaches us how to quarantine Satan in two verses of the Quran. The first verse, which is verse number 200 of chapter 7 of the Quran, which reads, "And if an evil whisper comes to you from Satan, then seek refuge with Allah God. Verily, He is all-hearer, all-knower." The first step to quarantine Satan is that when you experience a voice in your mind, with a voice matching what you think with, telling you ideas of harm, lust, and blasphemy, then seek refuge with Allah, meaning to remember the guidance you are hearing now, and to remember that the thought you just experienced is not from yourself, but from your companion devil, from your enemy, that he wants to bring you pain and despair. And the statement is illogical, what he whispers to you with, but he tries to convince you that it's logical. Now the second step in making a quarantine for Satan, we can learn from verse number 168 of chapter 2 of the Quran, which reads, "O people, eat of that which is lawful and good on the earth, and do not follow the footsteps of Satan. Verily, he is to you an open enemy." So Allah is telling us, do not follow the footsteps of Satan, meaning do not agree nor carry out what Satan is telling you. For example, he tells you in your mind and convinces you of drinking alcohol. Do not believe him. Do not carry what he's telling you. Do not do what Satan is telling you. Now these two steps, if you strive to implement them, you quarantine Satan, meaning that he stops affecting your sayings and doings. So I hope, brothers and sisters, that with the help of Allah God Almighty, I'm successful in this lecture of getting the point across of how Satan affects us more clearer by giving a comparison between the effect of Satan on each and every one of us and the effect of computer viruses on the computer. And to know more details about this topic and other topics about the last revelation of Allah God to people of the Quran, please visit my website at www.quran-miracle.com, and you can email me at zaidquran@gmail.com, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all.